Hey guys, welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk about an epic finale, an epic conclusion to what is definitely one of my favorite series of 2024, and that is Empire of Gold by Shannon Chakraborty, the third novel in the Daevabad trilogy. First and foremost, this book feels like a culmination of payoff for the last two books. We have a lot of the threads, a lot of the seeds that were planted in the first two books. They really start to blossom and pay off in this one. Things we didn't necessarily see as important or consequential, they do have a ramification that comes to a head in this book. And all secrets are revealed, all mysteries exposed. It's pretty intense. It's a massive book. It's one that's very unforgiving. You have to focus on how things play out, and it richly rewards you. Like everything I love about this series so far, it just comes to a head, and it's like it's perfectly distilled in this book. Even more so because it has two books worth of nuggets that kind of pay off in this one. As if that's not bad enough, our main characters, they really get thrown into it in this installment. Like the screws really get turned on them. So, in addition to just the craziness of events, we have the emotional toll that it took, easily outweighing the past two books by far. I think one of my favorite things about this book and this series in general is just the way that it handles like these themes of just like the clash of history and the the factors of like tradition versus evolution and progress, and it really comes to a definitive head in this novel, in that so far we've been seeing the role that these things have played in Daevabad, in how it's in how it's come to shape the modern society of this city, and how it's come to shape the current politics of the ruling members of the city also. And in this book we see what is basically Shannon Chakraborty's answer to this conundrum. Like how do you reconciliate all of this? Like how do you move forward when there's not necessarily a right party, or a just one? How do you correct ages worth of injustice and oppression when each side has a justification and is quite ready to scapegoat the other, and neither side is better than the other? How do you choose between the lesser of two devils? How do you choose the lesser of two devils, I should say, when both seem to be practically the same thing with a different face? It's a very interesting conundrum that's been kind of building in the last two books, and I like the answer that's presented in this one. It's very progressive. It's much easier executed in fiction than in real life, but at the same time we do continue to see examples of it playing out in real life, sometimes to ridiculous extremes. Whatever your thoughts are on that. But yeah, like these books have ultimately been about a very long and very turbulent history of Daevabad, and in this book we see the status quo gets a shake-up, that leaves the door wide open for a new way of doing things, and it's I personally like it a lot. That kind of allows me to segue into talking about one of the things that didn't quite work for me with the sequel. Like it kind of feels like going into it like there was just so much momentum, so much stuff going on that it it became kind of difficult to stick the landing for some of these threads without introducing some things that were kind of hinted at and teased at, but in a very backhanded way that and it suddenly became like this important part of the story. It kind of feels like we were set up in a way. Like it a lot of these things came out of left field and not in a good way. Instead of feeling like something that was like this was an element of the plot that was meant to pay out, it feels instead as like, okay, this was a random idea that was injected in past. How can I use this to suddenly throw a wrench in things at the end, to just for the sake of subverting the reader's expectation, and not necessarily because this was a planned this was a planned and integrated part of the payoff. There's a few different things like that happened that it kind of jarred me because they really stand out given how well thought out, well executed the rest of this book and the series has been so far. Like it's an absolutely brilliant conclusion to a really brilliant series. So when things like that happen, it kind of feels like looking at a well painted wall and then there's a pretty obvious patch job just below your eyesight that you're kind of meant to like accept as part of that paint job. No, just no, it doesn't work. Regarding our main character Nari, I can safely say that I expect most readers of the series are going to be like utterly captivated with how her story plays out and the choices and that kind of stuff. But for me, my I think the character that really stood out for me at the end of this series would have been Dara. The absolutely tortured soldier who like over the course of this series he just oscillated back and forth. He was placed in a very difficult position to like deal with the consequences of his past, and he was never really given a chance. He at every turn he was just forced into this mold that people want him to be. He was never given a chance to make his choice and be who he wants to be. And more than once along his path he stumbles and he falls and he does fit this mold because it's just easier for him than to fight and stick to his values. And that's something I can like really stood out with me. Because sometimes like it's easier to just tell people screw you than to try to stick to your guns basically. It really resonated with me. So like the way his particular story ends was something that I enjoyed tremendously. Like I felt kind of vindicated reading. But yeah, I think I think in summary, like this is just, I've said it before, I'll say it again, an epic conclusion to an epic series. It's just fascinating. Like I still can't believe like Shannon Chakraborty was able to create something of this caliber, like on her very first outing of writing fantasy novels. She's since reading this, like I've noticed she takes a few years in between like novels, and I'm perfectly fine with that because if each one is going to be a novel of this caliber, I'm perfectly fine with the wait because it will be worth the wait. Like at this point, I can say I've read all 4 of her novels, including the first in her Amina Al-Sarafi series, and she's definitely an author I'm going to be picking up on release date every day moving forward, regardless of what she writes. A really great finale to a really great series, and I can't wait for what she brings to us next. If you've read this series, if you've enjoyed this series, if you have thoughts on it, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you've made it this far, thank you for watching, and until next time.